Yeah. I lost my father-in-law a couple of weeks ago, so we're just trying to make our way through these next weeks naturally. So that's been hard, but it's
Sorry.
good to have something amazing to celebrate. Yeah.
Was he, how old was he?
He had just turned 65.
Young.
Mm-hmm.
Very sorry, John.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Jackson. Thank you, Councilman Sacker.
Well, I think we're waiting on Councilman Gregory and a few others. We'll kind of get started. I don't think we'll be here for the full hour tonight unless you all have plenty of questions for Amber, myself, and Dudley, but we'll try to get through as quick as possible.
Amber has been great answering our questions. Kudos to Amber.
Yes. Oh, I didn't see. So, hey, Jerome, Ross, Elvin, Abraham. Did I miss anybody? Dudley's on.
Dudley.
How are y'all?
Good.
Has anyone heard of Crystal?
Crystal?
Yes.
I talked to her earlier today, so I think she should be on.
Okay.
Let's wait another 20, 30 seconds, then we'll get started.
We miss you, Mitch.
Yeah, 3 words, but we miss you, Mitch, but mean so much more than you can imagine. All right, well, let's get started. Velvet, are we up on the good old YouTube?
Yes, we are live.
All right, awesome. I'd like to call the Special Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation meeting to order. I'd like to start with a moment of silence. Thank you for that nice moment of silence. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of February 10th, February 24th, March 3rd, and March 16th?
I move for approval.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I have a correction.
sure.
On the March 3rd minutes, on the page 3,
Okay.
toward the bottom, it says, Mr. Harris suggests the city hire a writer to compile the recommendations into a final report. The recommendation was to secure technical assistance in developing a format and writing the final report.
Okay. Velvet, did you hear that?
Yes, we'll make that change.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
while we're making a brief amendments, I apologize. I don't remember which. I think it was the first one when Criminal Justice gave their report, and I was quoted as talking about low-hanging fruit being some of the ordinances that the ordinance subcommittee of the subcommittee determined could, were either out of date or irrelevant or whatever. And the word that's in the minutes is redacted, and it should be revised.
And what, do you know what minutes those are for, Council?
I think it's the February 10th. It's
Okay.
whenever the Criminal Justice was making their interim report. It's a paragraph where I was talking about ordinances being low-hanging fruit potentially for the commission to consider.
Okay.
See?
Did you get that?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to, I guess, get a motion to approve those minutes as amended with those 2 items that were mentioned. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Oh, just to be clear, are we talking about just February 10th? Or are we taking all February 10th, 24th, the 3rd, and 16th?
The intent was to take them all at once. Are there any
Yeah, I
other,
second that
I guess
motion.
I'll ask the question, are there any other amendments for the approval of those minutes for February 10th, 24th, 3rd, and 16th? If not, I'd like to take them all. Do I get a motion to approve those minutes?
We have one, Councilwoman Jackson and John Mitchell second.
Thank you. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The minutes are approved for the 10th, 24th, 3rd, and 16th. Thank you. Other than that, I think we just wanted to open it up for discussion about any needs you all have. I certainly wanted to just weigh in on a couple things before we start. Number one, and I know you all have been speaking directly with Amber on the final recommendations. And Amber, feel free to chime in at any point, but your draft is due to Amber, I believe, April 26th. Is that correct, Amber?
That's correct.
And then Amber is going to attempt to turn that draft around, distill everything down into a final document with my help and Dudley's help, and get that back out to you all for comments around April 30th. Does that sound about right for you, Amber, and the team here?
Yes.
All right. And then I also wanted to just let you know, we are hosting two working sessions with council workshops. Those dates still have not been finalized, but there'll be two sessions that will be focused on the work that we've done for the past several months. But I did want to mention that, the importance of those workshops are twofold. One is we wanted to let council members kind of get up to speed that haven't been participating in the commission, which is roughly half of our council, get them up to speed on some of the recommendations. But more importantly, it's really to discuss with them some of the terminology and the terms that we have been using interchangeably throughout our discussions. The term of equity, reparations, white supremacy. Those terms need to be defined, and I think it's important for us to share those definitions with council members. We all kind of start from a place of understanding as we move forward and have kind of deeper discussions on council. So that's the point of those two workshops that we'll be having with council. And I think the mayor just joined us. Hey, Mayor.
Good evening. Hey, council member, how are you?
I'm well. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. And y'all pardon me if I came home and my computer connection keeps failing. I've been on two other meetings, so it may go out. But the other thing, if I may just say a few words and get the night off, I got home and my daughter from Spartanburg had showed up with my 3-year-old and 1-year-old grandchildren. So they're right here on the porch, and I do want to spend a little time with them. I don't see them that often, so I'm going to listen in for just a few minutes. And if anybody got anything for me, of course, if you don't mind, ask now or let me know now. Otherwise, I wanted to thank you all for your work. I know we've been on a journey together. We continue on this journey together. I'm really excited to be taking the reports to City Council and having the workshops, and then moving on to the next phase of implementation of recommendations, along with all the other things we're doing. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mhm.
And I'm certainly not going to speak for Dudley, but this has been a process and a journey for us. It's not over. And I want to personally thank everyone for their time, number one, and their commitment to the work to get us here. I've said this before, and I've said this with, fellow council members and family and friends that have asked me about this work. This is all on you all. I've been proud because this has not been something that has been pushed by council members. This has really been pushed by you all. And I know, full transparency, I know it's been frustrating at times, but that's part of the work. I do want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm proud to be part of something where I feel that the community members, as yourselves, really came together and will put together a great set of recommendations. And it's going to be incumbent upon us and the mayor, council members and the mayor to put that work forward and make sure that it has a life and make sure that there's some energy behind it. But you all have done your part. I just want to make sure you're clear. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to allow me to come on this journey and learn from this. And with that, I certainly turn it over to Dudley or to Amber, and then we can open up to some questions that you all have.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just ditto what you said. It's been an unbelievable sacrifice for all of us. However, I see this as just the beginning because we're still going to need all of you as we move forward with recommendations that we know are not going to be popular, recommendations that are going to be controversial. So we're still going to need your community support as we move forward. We want to upset the norm. We want to upset the apple cart. We want to be able to use terms like reparation and white supremacy loosely to be able to explain exactly what our mission is here. And our mission is still clear to me: eradicate the vestiges of slavery, Jim Crow, and systemic racism. And that is going to be the focus continually. And that's how we'll be looking at these recommendations accordingly. And as we go through the recommendations, there may be some that may be added based upon the collective. So don't have pride in authorship because some of us on criminal justice may look at housing and say, hey, I think that this is a great recommendation here, and vice versa. So we're just trying to make sure that we develop something that is going to show that the city of Charleston is very, very serious to make the apology for slavery and Jim Crow real. And this is just an extension of it. Again, thanks. Appreciate you guys. You're on mute, Jason.
Thanks, Dudley. Amber, anything you wanted to mention before we get into kind of a Q&A or any kind of technical needs you all need, or fellow council members that are on the commission, anything you all want to mention?
The only thing I have is if there are questions about transferring your interim reports into the template, please reach out to me. I'm more than willing to answer questions and to help out as much as I can so that we can get the report done together.
Thanks, Amber. Keith?
You're on mute, Keith. Okay.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you, Councilman. I want to bring a new piece of business to the commission. I don't know on the agenda where new business comes in, so I'm going to depend on the chair people to correct me on that. So I don't want to leapfrog the agenda. So where does new business come in on this?
I think at this point, Keith, it's kind of an open forum. So
okay, all right, great. Shoot. One of the things I want to bring to the commission is what I see is a potential problem with the low country open, with the low line. I started to say low country open land trust with the low line. The low line could be, I don't know, a $40 or $50 million project. Right now, the city has been entering into, in a very preliminary way, and I want all y'all to know this is kind of like Play-Doh. We're kind of shaping this thing. I think everybody agrees with the low line. When I mean everybody, I'm talking the mayor and all 12 council members. So if you say do the low line or not do the low line, you got 13 votes to do it, including mine. But when it comes to how do we spend the money, right now, if we were, the initial proposal, very preliminary as I've seen, has been to give money to Friends of the Low Line to do it. When it comes to spending city money in an equitable way, our city department has done it very successfully. To my knowledge, the Low Line, the Friends of the Low Line have never done it. So we're taking taxpayers' dollars, potentially giving it to a private group, not only to do a project that's owned by the city. The Low Line is owned by the city of Charleston. But our capital projects department, for example, on the $142 million gear yard spent north of 30% with women and minority-owned businesses to do that project. The International African American Museum right now, the actual hard construction of it right now is probably slightly north of 60 million and 55 to 60 million. And the spending with African American and women and minority-owned businesses is again high 20, 28, 29, not quite 30%. I happen to be on the boards of both entities. But our capital projects with the city of Charleston done a yeoman's job in doing that. We have this thing called a TIF, and it's very new for most people on this committee, but it's a, let's just say it's a positive red line. You all may be familiar with red line around a community not lending into a community. But what a TIF does when the city does it, it's normally done around a blighted area and try to encourage development in that area. And when the tax revenue increases, when new buildings and apartments and office buildings arise, the property taxes increases. And instead of those dollars being shared with the school district and the county, as well as the city, there's an agreement that says all those dollars go back to that outlined area to help pay for improvement. There's something called the Cooper River TIF. That's where the money's coming from right now, identified to do the low line. And it shouldn't be a political fight between tug of war between the 13 members of council. We need more people looking over our shoulders. When we, at the last council meeting, appropriated approximately 250,000, again, a superficial amount when you're talking 40 to 50 million, to the Friends of the Low Line. Right now, if our life depended on, I know if my life depended on it, I couldn't name the members of the Friends of the Low Line. I don't even know who they are. When it comes to how do they spend money with women and minority-owned businesses, I can't speak to that. And I'm not alone in not being able to speak to that. So, and when it comes to this TIF money, those dollars can be spent on drainage, which in the area it is, you have a number of public housing facilities in there where people have been literally sloshing around the water for decades. State law was changed last April to enable some of the monies to be spent on affordable housing. Right now, some of us have said, well, maybe on this project, it's an oxymoron. You can't create affordable housing as well as do the low line. Low line is a game changer in some cases. And then obviously we can spend money to create parks, which the low line is a linear park. And will be a 5 linear park. But when we appropriated those dollars at the last meeting, I clicked on the Zoom meeting and we had 44 people on the Zoom. Well, I know 13 of them was the mayor and council. So that knocks you down to 31. Approximately maybe 15 to 20 was our staff. That knocks you down to, I don't know, if it was 15, that knocks you down to 16 people. And then we normally have somebody from the Preservation Society, Historic Charleston, Low Country Open Land Trust, Coastal Conservation League. So when you get down to actual public having input or even listening in on that from a transparent standpoint, maybe 10 people out of 130,000 people. We got to do better. So this is a decision that we need more people looking at. We're in the process of developing a more defined memorandum of understanding, but the equal opportunity for people to have a crack at this business, I really don't like the way the initial start has been. And I believe when more people begin to look at it, I don't think they're going to like it either. So I thought, we could wrestle with this as politicians, or I could bring this to a committee that should be able to have some input and some say-so on it. So that's why I'm bringing this as new business, because when you're looking at a potentially $40 to $50 million project, when it comes to the city of Charleston, South Carolina, we don't have many $40 and $50 million projects. But when we do, those dollars are raised from the community at large through taxation and should be able to be spent in an equal and fair way, in an inclusive way. So that's why I'm bringing it here, because there's a number of game changers that are available, in particular when it comes to what we see what's happening in Washington right now, with stimulus packages, with infrastructure packages coming through with an administration that is sensitized to dollars being spent in all communities. This is a wonderful opportunity to potentially leverage some dollars coming through the TIF district for drainage, for affordable housing, and for the low line. And there needs to be a spending formula in place that frankly attacks all three initiatives. So I bring that as new business to the committee.
Yeah,
And
Keith,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Huh?
Thank you, Keith.
if I may respond, I know that
Sure. Go ahead, Dudley.
our economic empowerment committee has been in fact looking at the low line, and have some recommendations, if I'm not mistaken, regarding that. Alvin, would you like to address Keith as much as you can at this point?
Yes, real quick. My only recommendation is, excuse me, that, it sounds like you need to get the information out to the people, right? When you talk about equity, by definition, equities mean people where they are. So to me, it sounds like you guys had a meeting, a large percentage of the meeting were council people, correct? And then not a lot of people in the community was part of the meeting. So part of success, in my opinion, is getting public buy-in. And the only way that you can do that is to go out there and sell the project. I think whenever the people find out about what the project is, as opposed to what they think it, can be, I think it's a win-win. But yeah, so when we met with them, we have a very spirited group. So things kind of sort of, as the mayor found out, our recommendation to them was, when you talk about equity, you have to be intentional about who you're targeting. And part of our conversation was based around, yes, we want to have dollars in there for contractors and things of that nature, but you got to have representation in the space and when you're trying to create that vision as well. So how do you get out to the community and bring the community into the room so you can support that vision, right? So part of that is a robust public outreach. You have to spend some of those dollars to get out there in the streets and meet the folks where they are. So it's bridging a gap. To whom much is given, right? So if you have the much, you have to probably take a couple, extra steps, more so than the people that don't have much. So yeah, it was like I said, a very spirited conversation, and I will give it to the folks at the Friends of the Low Line. Equity is on their mind. It is at the tip of their tongue in every conversation. And that just really, made us feel better about it, right? As opposed to thinking that we're going to go into this conversation and, they're going to try to talk over us. A lot of the dialogue, a lot of the conversation was really just focused on, we want to hear what you guys have to say. So they're going into this with an open mind, a dynamic group of folks, but I do think that you need a little bit more representation in the space where the vision is happening. That's my number one recommendation. And then also, when you talk about contractors, right, we talk about minority contractors, minority-owned contractors. We were very much focused on Black-owned businesses. So really trying to carve out a space for Black-owned businesses, not only help build the space out, but also be able to, benefit from that space long term. So we don't only want to build it, we also want to benefit from it from a, long term as well. So.
And Alvin, you guys also came up with a name for the low line, didn't you?
We were actually, we didn't come up with a name, but we definitely challenged the current name, right? When you say, words matter, right? Low line. When you think low, you're thinking like the bottom of the barrel. It's not necessarily very high priority. So I would recommend something else. And Tom Bradford was very much open to it. So yeah, I definitely think there's an opportunity to kind of sort of look at the naming, figure out what just says energy, what just says Charleston, what just, talks about our past and where we're trying to go. But it's a really blank slate right now, to be quite honest, right? Tom and those folks made it very clear to us that everything that we're looking at is preliminary, like nothing's etched in stone, so things can change. And that was that made us feel good as well. So it wasn't like they were trying to shove something down our throats. It was, we want to have this dialogue, we want to come into this equity space. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Alvin. I know Mr. Harris had his hand up. One thing I want to mention before, and Mayor, you're leaving. Have a good night. Enjoy the grandkids.
Yeah. Know about that.
All right.
Mr. Harris, go ahead.
Sure. Just real quickly, I guess back in February, we had a discussion about the Kellogg grant application. Just wondering whether or not there's any information about whoever the application wasn't submitted, what's in it. Is there any interface or information that we might need to consider in the work that we're doing going forward with our reports?
That's a great question. Amber and Sarah Fischera, our grant writer for the city, did participate with YWCA. Amber can give an update on that in a second, but I definitely wanted to get back to Keith's point about the low line. I certainly am not defending them or supportive of them. I'm supportive of the project, but I think it's important to be critical. And I think Keith's making some good questions about outreach. They did reach out to us, Keith, myself, Dudley, and Councilman Mitchell, to be on their board, which speaks to some of the concerns that you have. If we have visibility and we're on the board, just like you're on the board, at the museum, I think that's going to help with some checks and balances, and certainly kind of pushing the work that we're doing here on the commission. But they have reached out to us. I've had conversations with them around the work that they're doing, and just from a symbolic standpoint, who they have on the community, who are they reaching out to? Very similar to Alvin's point, I think that they were a very, I would say, an organization that's led by a few white people, and the board was predominantly white. I think we're pushing them to make sure that they diversify, but it's a process. But I just want to let you know, Keith, that I'm aware of that, and I've shared those concerns with them. Councilwoman Jackson, then I definitely want to get Mr. Harris's question answered regarding the grant.
Yeah, we would love to know more about the grant too. I hope this is not just overkill or repeating, but I do think that the opportunity to work with the low line to help them, not reinvent, literally recreate, refabric themselves, to be a responsive nonprofit that gets it, is really our challenge. And I think that's the challenge to all of us, as we say we're gonna, this commission is just getting started, and we're all a bunch of words at this point in time. We're brilliant words. I'm joining Councilmember Saccharin, and when I talk about volunteering for the commission, it's like the pinnacle of what we get to do, because we're working with people that we didn't know before, physically, literally. we're working with ideas and experience that, you know, we've read about if we're trying to be conscientious in our society today, but we haven't really, you know, like done the work in this same framework. And I do feel like if the low line can be sort of at the point of the spear as a, it's not shovel ready, but it's certainly far down the road, and being the kind of project that could be an amazing learning lab for all of us, and push them to make their words, you know, have real actions, then I think we can bring hope to the rest of the city citizens that we can keep going in that vein. We're not just a bunch of fluffy political words. We're gonna put our shovels in the ground and find money from wealthy people who want to get accolades in this age of, you know, Black Lives Matter. And we're going to take advantage of all those resources, but we're going to make it real. And I think that's the challenge to all of us. And we should continue to push the low line to live up to what their words are now telling us. Willing to reinvent themselves. They want to have a new board. They're going to have a new director. They want to have a new, you know, understanding of what they can accomplish in neighborhoods that don't look like the wealthy below broad people that put this together, you know, up until a couple of years ago. So let's put them to the test, and ourselves at the same time.
We've got to put everything to the test.
Mr. Chairman, let me address a couple of that. As far as the, you know, racial makeup of the low line, I really do believe they're well-intentioned people. I don't have anything negative. Yeah, they have had token memberships, but I believe they're good people on that committee. White, black, Asian, doesn't matter. I think they're good people. You got good people and you got bad people. I think you got good people. My question is around the actual taxpayers' dollars being controlled and bidded out by a department that's very experienced and has been very successful in doing so. Okay, that's the piece that I think the public doesn't know about. And if we don't have a spending formula, one project will leapfrog the other. And that's the portion that I think a lot of people in the committee, a lot of people in the community doesn't realize. So see, when we don't do a drainage project out of a TIF area that is eligible for the money, then when those drainage projects are fixed, it has to come from another pot of money that's designed to help the whole city. So when you don't do a drainage, for example, in the Cooper River drainage basin, and you go to and you spend it on another project, then that means you take money away from West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island, from their drainage projects to be fixed. When you don't take money that's eligible to do affordable housing in that area, then and on one of the areas that is the most crucial area for affordable housing right now is probably the peninsula. It is the most expensive. We had the state law changed. The mayor was a big part of that. Senator Kempson was a big part of that. You could not spend money from TIF areas on affordable housing. Today, you can spend the money to acquire property. You can't do, my understanding, you can't do the vertical, but you can acquire the sites. What appears to me right now that the low line is leaping in front of, from appropriations, being able to get money out of this pot in front of drainage and affordable housing. And that should be known, that should not happen, okay? That's not equitable. The track record of being able to do business with women and minority-owned business and being set up to do that, the city is set up to do that and has a track record. Has it been the most successful? No. But on the large projects, they have been very successful. Whereas the low line has to set that up. I don't want to dominate the meeting with that because I'm going to be on a circuit carrying this word throughout the community. Because the people of West Ashley don't even know how this affects the drainage funds.
Hey, Keith, if I could suggest that at some point you have some further discussions with Alvin in the regard, because I hear you clearly.
Yeah, I know the council members know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
So I just kind of want to bring the committee members up to speed a little bit more, but I'll get with Alvin so he can, I'll bring him up to speed, be happy to bring him up to speed on that. But this committee certainly should have a say once the information is digested.
I agree, Keith. I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. John, you had your hand up, and then Tracy.
Briefly, I just wanted to say that this is a great opportunity for us to take a lot of the recommendations that we're talking about and pilot some of those same things with this partnership, because it speaks to what I know Alvin's been bringing forward in his group, which is some of those public-private partnerships, that relying on a lot of those relationships that already exist. Because it's not like the city doesn't already have relationships with a number of minority and women-owned businesses that we can't help them orchestrate. But we're just saying, along with saying we expect you to make this certain kind of goal for participation, we're not only saying that we're providing you with the tools and encouraging that in whatever ways, and holding them accountable in a way, and saying that it's not enough to just have people added to your board, I think is another big thing, because we talk about that, and that accountability is key, but it's a both and, right? It's not something where like doing this is going to mean you check the box. You've got to have that as well as dollars in place, and investment shown through those dollars in place. And so I just wanted to make a point that this does stand to serve as a perfect example of how we can show how the policies and recommendations that we're making out of this group can be used as a avenue to make broader improvements in a group, for a region that doesn't necessarily have all the funds and investment to do everything that we see needs to be done. Instead of trying to feel like we're putting impediments in the way, we're just making it clear, like Councilman Waring said, that we have our eyes on you, and we're going to hold you to this high standard, because this is the standard of work that we need to see, and this is the standard of work that needs to be delivered to kind of honestly put the zipper back in place for this community that's been so broken up and divided over the course of so many years, and so many other different projects and so many other different things that have kind of come through down that spine. I mean, we all know what King Street used to look like even 20 years ago. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, John. It's a great point, and it's got to be on both ends. One second, I think Tracy had her hand up. Tracy, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not, I don't want to, take too long on the low line because there's some other things, but I do want to say that the low line was a great example of a project that was here, getting ready to go, that all of our subcommittees, I think for the most part, worked with the low line. And I know they came to our subcommittee meeting. I know Abraham Champagne, my co-chair that's on here tonight, did a great job working with them. And so, I think that the low line is a little bit of a guinea pig with this process, which has been great. And I felt like they heard our recommendations. One of the recommendations that came from Melissa Maddox Evans was, no one has spoken to the people who live in public housing that live on the low line. They need to be engaged with. And, so I think we came at it from lots of different directions, and there's certainly funding issues and all of that. But I think that they were a good project example for us to all get our arms around and look at. And I think that was a really good thing for the commission and for the low line.
Thank you, Tracy. Dudley, and I think Jerome, you had your hand up again. You're good.
Yeah, I just saw something from Jerome in the chat room, and Jerome, you're absolutely correct. This is also something for the internal review committee to also be looking at. But I just wanted to say that I think the low line is just the tip of the iceberg, guys. Okay, I mean, when we're going to be looking at things with an equity lens, we're talking about looking at that through every single department within the city. Okay, when we do stormwater and drainage allocation and all that kind of stuff, we need to take a look to see whether or not it's being done with an equity lens. We can do that with housing. We can do that with every single department that we have. So, I'm with you. We've got to deal not just with the low line with regard to this, but with regard to all contracting of the city and every single department within the city in terms of whether or not our programs are being administered with an equity lens.
Thanks, Dudley. I do want to, the meeting was 5:30 to 6:30, and majority of this really should have been focused on any feedback that Amber had from us regarding the final recommendations, which are coming in a couple of weeks. And I know Mr. Harris had a question about the grant. So Amber, can you just give us an update on the grant process, how we were involved? And as far as I know, I have not heard anything from the YWCA or Kellogg, but I think Mr. Harris is probably just wanting to know what that process was like leading up to the submission. Is that correct, Mr. Harris?
That's fine.
All right.
So the application was submitted. It was a collaboration with several other community organizations, including the Y, Trident Cradle to Career. I know the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative, and I think a few others. And I guess for the city, our role would be the legislative piece. So it would be the recommendations from the commission on what ordinance and policy changes for the city would be how we would be systemically looking to dismantle racism, and that would be our role. So the application was submitted and we passed the administrative review process. So they are now at the peer review process of the application. And so we're just waiting to hear what's coming next.
And Amber, can you just talk a little bit about the grant funding? Didn't we request certain X dollars in the grant itself to fund some of these efforts?
I think if I'm remembering correctly, I believe it was $60,000 per year for the 10 years is what we were requesting to hire a person to help with our community engagement in the process of taking the recommendations from the community to the commission to city council.
That's my recollection as well. Mr. Harris, was that sufficient?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether also any of the ideas, particularly anything that had to do with community engagement or increasing communication might be a benefit, particularly since in the area of public safety, the notion of community policing and community relations are important. So I'm just wondering whether or not there were any active pieces in that. So I'll just take, if I can get a look at the proposal later, I can get my question answered.
That's a great idea. Did you got the final submission, right, Amber?
I do have it. I can send it out.
Share that with all of us by email at some point?
Yes.
All right. That'd be very helpful. And then, maybe some of that language, reading that would help us spur some of our final recommendations in the report we finally finalize. Any other questions on those items or anything else that we need to address tonight with the final recommendations? Anything else? Anything else? 6:15, folks. We've got another 15 minutes at least to hang out.
Well, look, I can always ask you guys, do you have any additional thoughts that were generated by virtue of national or local responses to the verdict yesterday? All of us took a deep breath of relief. It was a defining moment in a almost year-long challenge about whether the justice system could be held accountable. But also as a moment now where we can think about reimagination. So I'd ask any of you if there are any thoughts that you had or anything that you've seen that you think is particularly relevant that we should be talking about in the context of the reimagining our criminal justice system, both the courts and the public safety delivery services. Please share that with me, us.
Anybody?
I look forward to the day that it doesn't have to be seen as a sigh of relief, where it's just like an expected.
Amen.
When somebody does that vile, it's seen as a bygone conclusion what the result will be, as opposed to something where you've got to wait and sit on pins and needles. I look forward to a day where the the blue veil is truly torn, and we can count on police officers to do the duty that they know to do and have the honor that they show in so many other ways. Speaking as a child of a former law enforcement officer. So that's what I look forward to as a result of this, is the kind of movement towards that being the norm and not such an exception.
I agree with you, John. I think that the way that the jury was given the truth had a lot to do with the fact that the officers and the experts in policing, were 100% on the side of the prosecution. And I think that's mind-catching to people who are used to it being the polar opposite way for how many hundreds of years. I hope that all the smart people that I've heard since last night, are saying, this was great, but it's not done. So it's just like our commission work, this was right, but it doesn't satisfy or answer what we know has been wrong for all the time. So I hope that we can play our part in that for sure.
Anybody else?
I don't know where to start, Jerome.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a lot of work to do. I mean, because as you know, even during the trial, we had police shootings and killings. Until we get to the root of what is systemic within these police departments, some of which we do know, and can change the policies accordingly, that perpetuates the original purpose of policing, as opposed to reimagining policing for today. It's going to continue. We all know why police departments were formed. Okay? And to me, until we accept that and we go in with a scalpel, okay, and remove the cancer as best we can and get it all out there, not just in our police department, because it's interconnected, as you know. So yes, I was on pins and needles. I was happy for the verdict. But to me, that's all it was. It was a verdict. Hopefully it will help us along the way. But as you know, Jerome, we've got a lot of work to do on the criminal justice area in particular. So yeah, I was happy about it, but still, we've got a lot of work to do, even in our city, in our region.
Thanks, Debbie. Keith?
It's funny, I had my neighbor across the street. I called him afterwards. He had been in wreck to see how he was doing. But anyway, I asked him, he asked me, he said, man, how do you feel after the verdict? I said, obviously, I feel great for the family. And he said, but who? His son called him and said, who in the world would think this guy would have gotten off? I said, what do you mean? I said, it happened right here in our community. I said, Mr. Scott was shot in the back 5 times on film. And the state case came back with a hung jury. Mr. Slagle went to jail because of violation of civil rights, federal action. I mean, people saw it with their own eyes and still couldn't get a conviction. Now, we had one big victory in our local police department 2 months ago. We had a question. I posed a question at council. Our chief didn't know it. was coming. And I asked him, I prefaced it in a 5-year previous period of time, the city of Charleston had over 130 pretext stops, 130,000, I'm sorry, pretext stops in a 5-year period of time, 70% of which were African American, and we represent 30% of the population. We call that driving while black. That's what black people call pretext stops, okay? So I asked our chief, remember this is post racial bias audit with our 48 findings or whatever it was. So 2 years post that. So I said, tell me how many pretext stops have we had now? I knew the answer. He said, after saying a couple other things, he said, Councilman, we don't police like that anymore. I don't think our community realized what kind of victory that is. Mr. Castile was shot and killed in front of his girlfriend and child on a pretext stop. The young man, Dante Wright, who was killed 10 miles from the Hennepin County Courthouse in Minneapolis, was stopped on a pretext stop, you know, a license tag. I mean, expiration. Think about it. We got the technology today. That policeman could have taken a picture with the camera with the license tag, and they could have mailed that violation to that and never stopped them. Okay. Why would a policeman on a traffic stop, frankly, need a gun, need a taser? Okay, on a traffic violation. Too many people are getting killed and stopped. What people don't want to say, as it was in Missouri, the unofficial tax in part is when cities need to raise revenue, they write more tickets. Okay, which leads to these confrontations, which leads to people knowing they're being taken advantage of. So to get back to what Councilman Gregory said, reimagining the police department. I mean, we just got to find a better way of, we put too much energy in traffic. We're thinking the majority of the police department investigating murders or rape or breaking into your home. Majority of our stuff, most police departments goes into traffic. So that's one part that needs to be reimagined, frankly. But to say that, can we take a sigh of relief? We can't, because I gotta listen, when he was, don't even want to call his name on the gentleman's neck. Remember, there were 3 other police officers standing around. 2 of them on his remainder of his body. Even in a street fight, and Jerome and Alvin and some of us on this call know, even as boys, when one guy gets the better of the other, what do the people standing around do? You jump in and say, okay, that's enough. You break the fight up. Policemen didn't get up and tell that policeman, that's enough. Pull him up, get up off his neck. So to me, if I were those other policemen, I'd be entering a plea. I wouldn't want to go in front of a jury on that, because they sure can't say we were trained to do that. Well, they may say it, but anyway, I don't think it'll be believed. So we got a lot of work to do. I'm happy for the family, but I don't know if any of y'all have paid attention to the groups of the mothers across this country that have come together who've lost children due to being murdered by a policeman. And I'm gonna tell you, those women are very knowledgeable and articulate on best practices that need to be employed across the country. This piece with it's immunity. What's the term, Dudley? Is it certified immunity? Because
Qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity. I mean, qualified immunity needs to be done away with if you're really going to reform police department. It's a tough job, no doubt, but in part, one reason probably the senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, probably wasn't strongly considered in the finalists for the vice presidency. When she was the equivalent of solicitor, she failed to prosecute the same policeman who had 18 or 19 complaints against him. And he went on and to kill the gentleman that we now know. So we got miles to go, but we still got miles to go. That's my comment.
There's a poem that my sister wrote at some point I want to share with you, but it's called Black Women, Where Art Thy Power? I gave them to my children, Lord, and they're dying by the hour. So at some point, I'd like to share that total poem with you because it really tells an unbelievable story.
Thank you, Dudley and Keith. I guess we had a couple more minutes left, and Jerome asked the question. I'm going to be honest, as a white member and council member, I didn't know how to feel yesterday. Certainly, I was relieved, but I almost felt as though, like, I guess to John's point, why am I sitting there with bated breath waiting for the decision? And it really dawned on me, and I guess maybe this is part of the work that we've been doing, that it's my whiteness previous to that wouldn't have thought that I had to sit there with bated breath to wait. And I think this is the first time in my adult life that I really thought, I get it. I understand that if I'm sitting here wondering what the verdict is, that in itself is the problem, is the challenge. So that's where I was yesterday, Jerome. And I know that I've felt personally, shared with fellow council members, a sigh of relief. But I know that our work is nowhere near done. And I'm here to help.
Yeah, I made the observation only because in reading the charge to our commission, central to it or is the emotional component and the reality of what's happening nationally and what we're trying to accomplish in our community here. And I just think it would be remiss, since we had 15 minutes, if we didn't reaffirm and reflect and share some of that with each other as we continue to move, toward our quote unquote final product. Is that component of the work that the spirit of it that I don't think we can afford to lose.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Hey, Dr. Knight, yes.
Hey, I just wanted to know, after this meeting here, are we planning to have another one? Because I heard, Dudley, you mentioned that once the council members receive our draft, then you all are gonna, and then Jason, you said this too, you all are gonna look over it and then give us comments by April 30th. Will those comments be in writing, or will it be via another meeting where we're gonna have another discussion?
I will let Amber chime in, but it's my understanding that this is all electronic. So is that correct, Amber?
Yes, that's what we discussed.
Yeah.
Okay, then I would submit that I would suggest possibly, if it's available in terms of time, to have another meeting to talk about next steps, because I think that several of us as subcommittee chairs, we have some ideas that we really want to make sure are emphasized. Certainly, we will do our best in our individual subcommittee recommendations to emphasize those points. But it would be great to have an open forum where maybe we can even take a final vote and just say on the table, this subcommittee collectively recommends certain things out of all of our recommendations that need to be addressed by the city of Charleston moving forward.
I think that's a great idea. And you kind of took my thunder, Felicia. The last thing I was going to mention was next steps for us, meaning, I would love to hear from you all, and maybe this meeting could serve that purpose, about what this commission should look like and function like moving forward. I know many of you all have families, some of you right now, jobs, other things that you're doing. So certainly asking you to make a commitment like this moving forward would be a tough ask. But we definitely want to hear from you all in terms of what can you commit and if you can't commit, what you think the next version of this commission should look like, because I think we're all in agreement that the work in this commission has to continue. So I think another meeting at some point is a great idea, Felice.
And
Thank you.
And Felice, I think that one thing needs to come from this commission is a recommendation that the commission is codified so that it will be here forever, okay? And get rid of this 90-day, whatever that was. So I think one of the major things we need to do is to codify it, okay? And make it real and be in existence 30, 40 years from now.
Yeah. That's actually part of one of our recommendations. So yeah, we would certainly want to get that in there, right?
Ours as well.
City just to show us. Yeah, we just want we just want to know that not just our work isn't in vain, but that the city is truly committed to, equity from this point going forward. So yeah. I think you're going to see that throughout everybody. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elvin and Dudley and Felice for that suggestion. Amber, Dudley, and myself will get together to figure out when we're going to schedule that. If you guys have any questions about dates, deliverables, please let us know, and we'll get back to you. And then we'll let you know as soon as the city council workshops are scheduled. The hope is that all city council members will attend for both days. So that's the hope. And I will say to Councilman Appel and Waring and Jackson, and I don't have to say this to Councilman Gregory, I view the workshops, at least the 2 workshops, almost as a legislative bill that's we need to push. We got to make some phone calls. We have to make sure that every one of our colleagues is at both of those workshops and is there in heart and mind. And it's up to us to make sure that they're present. I also just want to say thanks to fellow council members, Jackson and Appel for everything you've done, and Councilman Waring for participating. I think you've made this journey and the work much more enriching. And I also appreciate the fact that you've deferred to the volunteers in some of this. And I think that's been very helpful for the work. Anything else? Is there anything else to come forward?
I just want to thank all the volunteers. I mean, as everybody else has. I mean, I don't think you all realize how great you all were. I mean, nobody held back. Everybody came, as Tiger would say, I guess you all came with your A game. And we needed that because you get elected to office doesn't make you all knowing. We were all members of the public and still are members of the public, but it's nothing like listening to members of the public who are focused on trying to be solution oriented. And that's exactly what every last person on this committee, has been. Even Dudley and I got tatted up a couple of times on a couple of subcommittees, but we're supposed to be larger than that and rise above, even when things may get personal. Sometimes you rise above because the community is more important than all of us on an individual basis. So I just really want to thank all of you all for the talents that you all, time, talent, and treasure, because even with your time, that was worth money that you all gave to this community. So thank you so much. And let's not stay away from one another for a long time. Okay.
So with that, is there any more business to come before our commission this evening?
Move to adjourn.
Move
to adjourn.
Heard?
Second.
All right, with that,